The story begins on a cold December morning when the town was still half asleep, wrapped in the quiet of winter. People hurried through the streets with their coats pulled tight, thinking about bills, deadlines, and holiday pressure. But in the middle of all the rush, there was one man who walked slowly, almost thoughtfully, as if the world around him wasn't weighing him down the way it did for everyone else. His name was Daniel, an ordinary man with an ordinary job, but a heart that carried more warmth than he ever admitted. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, and he didn't have millions stored away. What he did have was gratitude, something he had learned the hard way. Just a year earlier, Daniel had been at his lowest. He'd lost his job, his savings, and almost his hope. But then, a stranger had stepped in during a moment he would never forget. Someone had secretly paid his overdue water bill when he couldn't, saving him from eviction and giving him time to get back on his feet. That single act of kindness had changed the direction of his entire life. He promised himself that when he could, he would pass that kindness forward, not in the same way, but in a way that mattered. Now, with a steady job and slowly rebuilding stability, Daniel felt something pulling him toward doing something meaningful this holiday season. He walked into a Walmart, not with a shopping list, not with a purpose he could explain, but with that quiet feeling inside him, telling him that maybe today was the day he could make a difference. He wandered through the aisles watching people shop, tired parents trying to balance budgets, children pointing at toys they might not receive, elderly couples counting coins in their hands. He saw himself in all of them, struggling, hopping, trying. Then his eyes landed on a young mother at the layaway counter. She was holding her receipt tightly, whispering, "Please, just a few more days, I promise I'll bring the rest." Her voice cracked in desperation. The employee simply nodded sympathetically, telling her they'd hold her items as long as possible. Something in Daniel shifted. He wasn't sure what he was about to do, but his heart already knew. He approached the counter quietly, waited until the mother walked away, then leaned in. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I was wondering how many layaway balances are pending today." The employee looked surprised, then turned to the computer. "A lot," she said. "Most people are struggling. Some owe $10, some owe $100, some owe more." Daniel swallowed. His savings weren't huge, but he remembered what it felt like to be on the other side, hopping for a miracle. He took a breath. "Can I pay them off?" The employee blinked, thinking she misheard. "You want to pay off all of them?" Daniel nodded, almost nervously. "Yes, every single one." Whispering, shaking their heads in disbelief. Some even watched as Daniel quietly handed over his card, not for recognition, not for praise, but simply because he remembered what hopelessness felt like. The employee printed receipt after receipt, each stamped in red, paid in full. With every slip of paper, Daniel felt lighter, as if some weight he'd been carrying for years was finally lifting. He imagined the faces of the families who would come back expecting disappointment, only to find out their Christmas had been saved by someone they didn't even know. He didn't stay to witness their reactions. He didn't want the spotlight. All he wanted was to slip out unnoticed, leaving behind a trail of joy that would bloom without him ever having to see it. But fate wasn't going to let him disappear quietly. As he walked toward the exit, the same young mother from earlier was returning to pick up the small toy she'd put on layaway for her son. She walked to the counter nervously, preparing to beg for more time. But the employee smiled at her with eyes full of excitement. "Ma'am, your balance is already paid. Someone covered it." The mother froze. "Paid? No, that can't be right. I did." Tears filled her eyes. "Who? Please tell me who." The employee only shook her head softly. He didn't want to say. The mother turned around, scanning the store, and her eyes landed on Daniel just as he stepped toward the exit. Something told her it was him, not because he looked wealthy or important, but because he looked like someone who understood pain and kindness at the same time. She ran after him, calling out, "Sir, sir, please wait." Daniel stopped, startled, turning to face her. She stood there breathless, tears streaming down her face, clutching the toy in her hand as if it were gold. "Was it you?" she whispered. Daniel hesitated, unsure what to say, then simply nodded. The mother didn't know how to thank him. She had struggled for weeks just to give her son one present. She had prayed for a miracle even though life rarely gave her one. Now here was this stranger, giving her hope when she had none left. "Why?" she finally asked. Why would you do this for someone you don't even know? Daniel smiled gently. Because someone once did something for me when I needed it most, and now it's my turn. She broke down crying, thanking him over and over. Daniel simply placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and said, "Just pass it on someday, that's all." She nodded, holding the toy close, promising herself that someday, somehow, she would pay this kindness forward, even if it took years. Daniel left the store quietly, unaware that his small act of kindness was about to ripple farther than he ever imagined. Within hours, employees began sharing the story. Customers told friends. Friends told family. Someone posted it online, and before long, the entire town was talking about the anonymous man who had paid off every layaway at Walmart right before Christmas. People cried reading the story. They felt hope again, hope in humanity, hope in kindness, hope that there were still people who cared. But Daniel still didn't know any of that. He went home, made himself a simple dinner, and sat quietly by his small Christmas tree. He didn't need applause. He didn't need the world to know. He just needed peace, and that night he felt it more than ever before. The next morning, Daniel woke to a knock on his door. When he opened it, he found the young mother standing there with her little boy. No cameras, no reporters, just gratitude. The boy held out a small, hand-drawn card that read, "Thank you for helping my mom smile again." Daniel knelt down, touched beyond words, and hugged the boy gently. The mother explained that she had found out his name from the layaway staff, who finally admitted it after she insisted. She just wanted to thank him again, not as a stranger, but as someone whose life had been changed. Daniel didn't know that the kindness he had given that day would keep spreading. The young mother began helping other mothers in small ways, sharing food, watching kids, donating clothes. Employees at Walmart started a small kindness board encouraging customers to pay a little toward someone else's balance. People in town began offering rides, sharing meals, helping neighbors. A local business owner started a yearly kindness fund. Schools created kindness challenges. Without realizing it, Daniel had revived the heart of an entire town. One act, one moment, one quiet decision. Kindness doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need a reward. It simply needs a willing heart. Months later, Daniel walked into a cafe and overheard two strangers talking. "Did you hear about the guy who paid off all the layaways last Christmas? People are still doing good because of him. It's amazing how one small act changed everything." Daniel smiled quietly, sipping his coffee. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Because sometimes the greatest stories in the world are the ones we live without ever telling. And that is how one ordinary man, with an ordinary life, created an extraordinary wave of kindness that touched people he would never meet, in places he would never see, in moments he would never know existed. One small act of kindness, one powerful ripple, one changed world.